We can determine the domain and range of a function even if the given is a sketch of the graph. Don't forget that domain is defined as a set of all possible values of x, whereas range is defined as a set of all possible values of y. We just need to examine carefully our graph as to the direction of our graph going towards left and right for our x and up and down for our y to properly identify the domain and range of a certain graph. Let's consider this Cartesian plane and this line. In short, we are on a linear function. For our domain, we are going to examine the extent of this graph as we move from left to right or right to left. Notice here that there are no breaks on our graph and our graph extends infinitely on both sides. That would mean that our domain is a set of all possible values of x such that x is an element of a real number. As for our range, we're going to examine our graph vertically, up to down or down to up. Same thing here, our graph doesn't have any breaks and they are extending in both directions, up and down. In short, we are sure that our range is a set of all, in this case, y, such that y is an element of real numbers. So this is how we examine the domain and range of a function based on our graph. Of course, our domain and range here can be written in different ways as well. For our domain, we can write it as a set of real numbers, or interval notation, x values from negative infinity to positive infinity. As for our range, same thing, is a set of real numbers, and our direction for our y extends in both infinities, the negative and positive infinity. This is also true even if our graph changes its direction, such as this, because again, there are no breaks in the graph and our graph extends in both directions. Now, what if our graph is actually considered as a horizontal line? We can see here that our x still extends in both directions from left to right. In short, our domain is still the same as earlier. However, for our range, as we examine from up to down or down to up, it only, or the graph only, intersects our y-axis at exactly one point, and it doesn't change because we have here a horizontal line. In short, our range now is no longer the set of real numbers. That would mean our range is just the set containing y sub 1, the value of y, where our line intersects. Now, the same concept will be drawn now if our line is considered to be a vertical line. This time, the change now will go to our x, because our x, as we examine it from left to right, it only uses the first value of x sub 1. In short, our domain, no matter how long our graph is, it's only the set of x sub 1. But for our range, since our graph is vertical line, it extends in both directions, we will have here the set of all real numbers. Lastly, what if our graph has a break on it, such as this? In short, there is a restricted value for our domain and range, and that value for our x is this value x sub 1, which corresponds to the x value of this area or maybe point, and and for our domain, we will have here set of x such as x element of r, except that value of x sub 1, because that is the only restricted value for our domain. In other sense, we could also write it as this set of real numbers. This notation is except, or the set difference of the set containing x sub 1. Or the more difficult one, the more complicated notation, is the notation using interval notation from negative infinity to x sub 1, but it doesn't include x sub 1, so open, union, starting from x sub 1, still open because we don't include x sub 1, to positive infinity. Same process will be used to our range, but this time, the value that is restricted is this value of y sub 1. So similarly, our range now will be a set of y, such as y is an element of r, except that value, the restricted value y sub 1, because that is where the break is. And you will have another notation, possibly, you have set of real numbers except or less. We have the set containing y sub 1 and the same interval notation, but this time using y sub 1 instead of x sub 1. So we have established now the domain and range of a function, specifically a linear function, from no breaks to horizontal, vertical, and the possibility of a break on our graph. We will have a lot of videos for domain and range in our channel, so please review that and view our channel, and if possible, please subscribe to be updated on the next few videos.